You guys, I officially have an outline. I finished part 4 yesterday, last night, and I have it, it's here. There's a lot of things I still have to fix, but it's here. This is thrilling. Hello, and thank you so much for stopping by. If you're new here, my name is AJ, and I am trying to finish and publish my first fantasy novel. Today, I wanted to take you through the imperfect process of creating my first outline for my first fantasy novel. At least my first adult fantasy novel. My first fantasy novel as an adult. I wanted to go through the steps of how I went from a hot mess of a story idea to a more organized hot mess of a story idea. Now, this is definitely not the best outline you're ever gonna see, and it really does need a lot of work, but it gets the job done and it keeps me going, and I think right now that's perfectly imperfect for me and my story. This is not going to be a refined video on the craft of outlining and plotting. This isn't really going to be a how-to video, and I would caution against it being advice. The reason for this is because I'm an amateur writer, and there are much more qualified authors and experienced writers here on authortube that can probably give you a much better idea and a more higher concept idea on how to outline and plot your novel. I'm just taking you through the messy first steps. Okay, before I take you over to my actual computer screen to show you the outline and the ideas and stuff, I just want to take a minute to highlight that I know there are a lot of different ways to plot, and I'm pretty sure a lot of writers would agree that the best way to plot and outline your novel is the way that works for you. There are some people who take a really extensive approach and will spend maybe half a year or a full year just figuring out their story and then figuring out their plot and their outline. And there are some individuals who can outline their stuff in a day. There's also beat sheets that you can use. There's the classic story arc that you can use, but this is not necessarily going to cover any of them. This is just my messy process and the way I have organically come into the steps and the outline that's working for me right now. So without further ado, let me just show you what I'm talking about and how I got there. Okay, I'm gonna be quick just so that I don't spoil too much for you guys while I'm showing you my outline. But as you can see, I have followed the 4-act / 4-part structure. I think this is a pretty common organization that many writers use when they're dividing their novel or story out in parts. At least that's what I've seen, and that's the method that works for me right now. And ultimately, when I pan over to show you exactly what the outline looks like, it's essentially a couple of pages that summarizes the major scenes and ideas of each part. So like 1 to 2 pages, perhaps one of these is like 2.5 to 3 pages, but ultimately just making sure that the primary scenes and plot points are addressed in these like paragraph formats, and I have a couple of scene ideas. Now there's a lot of things that are missing from this outline currently, and I know that I'm going to have to, there's still workshopping some things, but what this serves for me right now is a roadmap so that when I start to write or go a little bit askew in scenes with my characters, I can come back to the main story and the main plot by just referring to the outline that I have here. So ultimately, right now I'm working in part 2, so if I want to make sure that I'm following the ideas I have for part 2, I can just quickly come here, refer to these paragraphs, make sure I'm hitting my marks, or if the marks don't follow with the characters currently, I can just come in here and edit it really quickly and see how it works with the rest of the story. Now, this is not a sit down like this. I didn't do this all in one sitting here, just because I don't want you to end up reading too much. Okay, so I didn't like do this all in one sitting. This is really just a way that came to me organically to help organize myself. And it's taken a lot of like brainstorming and failed attempts to get to this point right now. So very importantly, this is not the first time that I have tried to outline my novel. This might not even be the third time that I've tried to outline my novel. This is just the most successful time that I've gotten an outline of all 4 parts. So let me show you a little bit what the ideas look like when I'm trying to figure my story out, and what it looked like when I tried to plot and outline my novel previously. Because let me tell you, it's not this pretty, and even this isn't that pretty. First, I'll have a lot of world building, faith systems, a lot of just ideas that I have put down and literally just word vomit onto a Google Doc. And I promise you, there's a bunch more of this type of stuff in like Word, in my notes on my phone, in something on my iPad. Like, I have things everywhere, not just in Google Docs. I have a Scrivener full of drafts and random scenes. And that's the important thing to note, is that I write at the same time that I plan and outline. And I think that the first writing sessions, where I'm kind of doing both for the first time, is just trying to figure out exactly what story I'm trying to tell and what the characters are trying to do. So I'll go from this essential word vomit into an attempt to make the story make sense. Literally, I'll call it, let's make this make sense, where I then try to highlight the characters, what they want, what stands in their way, like very basic and brief information to keep in the back of my mind while I am writing and while I'm trying to plot. And of course, we have Act 1, Act 2. Originally, I attempted to do like bullet point scenes, but I think this was a little difficult for me, and having the essay format is just a little bit easier because it's more continuous and more in like a story sense. And what's very noted is that I've always had an issue with Act 4. I've never been able to figure out how I wanted my novel to end. And that's been, I think, a huge road bump when I was attempting to draft the first time last year, is that not having an objective and not understanding what the objective needed to be kind of made it fizzle out and die. But now that I've returned to it, I have a better sense. I have a better sense of the characters. I've got an outline. And of course, like over time, it does get more refined. You can almost see that I'm starting to do the essay format at this point, and still nothing in Act 4. And then I attempt it again, and you'll see I don't even get to Act 4. Okay. So this is really what this messy-ish process looked like until eventually I got here. And I think, again, the most important part of this is that I've got an outline for part 4. I have an idea of how I want the story to end. So this, what you're looking at, is the first time I have ever thought about finishing a fantasy novel. So that is ultimately the craziness of the process that I have. Maybe it's not that crazy, but you know what? It feels crazy to me. It's a little bit more organized. It has an idea for an ending. And I think probably what's helped me the most is writing while plotting. I think that these draft 0s and draft 1s are really important for me. And even though it takes up a lot of time, I need to write the scenes. I need to actually write the characters to figure them out a little bit more before I can go into actually plotting and planning. So I think I have to do both. I think I have to pants and then I have to plot, and that seems to be working for me right now. And so after this, I've actually started to organically develop chapters. So I don't even do chapters at first. So the next step for me, I think, is going to end up being a chapter breakdown and like a summary of each chapter breakdown while I continue to write in this first draft. It might not work at the end, but at least I'm getting somewhere. And I think at this point I've gotten farther than I ever have in the process. Okay, I think that's it. I went through everything that I wanted to share. Please let me know if you found any of this helpful. I would love to know how you guys approach your stories. If you write first, plot later. If you plot first, write later. Let me know down below in the comments, and I hope to see you in the next one.